All right, we're right on 12, so I am going to get us started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about digital technology in the not-for-profit space. This is a really exciting event for us for QCOS today because we're the first cab off the rank as far as events go or webinars go for Infoxchange, who just released their exciting report yesterday. So we're feeling really lucky and right on the edge of hearing all of the great intel that they've gotten from the compiling of this report. So welcome to all of you today. I'm sure you're going to hear some things throughout the webinar that will give you some great insights into how the sector is currently going in the use of digital technology, and importantly, what are the next steps for our sector as far as responding to the needs that we're seeing, as far as capacity goes, as far as infrastructure goes, all those things that we can be working on in the 12 months or so ahead. So I would like to thank Infoxchange and their team for joining us today, and really excited to hear what they have to share with us. If you haven't heard of Infoxchange, we have been working with this organisation over the year to deliver a few webinars. And Infoxchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise. They've been working in the technology, social justice space for over 30 years, and they have 180 staff across Australia and New Zealand. They tackle really big social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. This is something that our sector, I know, is growing our capability and expertise in. It's certainly something that we've been hearing from our members and stakeholders is an area for growth and development for them in their organisation. So we have been really keen to work with Infoxchange over 2023 to figure out what bits and pieces our sector can be working on, how we can really be advancing our knowledge in this space, and how we can utilise technology better to deliver services to our clients and service users in Queensland. So I will let Marcus and his team introduce themselves in a little bit just in a second. I want to remind you all that you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar, and we will be sending out a post-event email after the session with any resources, links, of course, a link to the report, and any useful resources that are shared today. So you will be getting that afterwards. So don't feel like you need to write down absolutely everything that's on the screen. You'll be getting that from us. Now, before I hand over to Marcus, I would like to acknowledge that I'm in the land of the Yagara and Turrbal people here in Brisbane. I'm in West End. This is where I do most of my work. I'd like to acknowledge their elders past and present, and acknowledge their continuing connection to this space and the care of this land. And of course, extend that acknowledgement to any First Nations people on the line and to the custodians of the lands that you are all coming from. We've got many people across Queensland in this session today, but we also have our Infoxchange colleagues who are interstate. So extending that acknowledgement to the elders who have cared for and continue to care for the lands that you are all on today. Okay, I am going to hand over to Marcus because he's got lots of things to share with you. So over to you, Marcus, and thank you again.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Stacey. It's a real pleasure to be here talking with the QCOS team again. I'm here on the land of the Wurundjeri people in the Kulin Nation, together with my colleagues, Bede and Rachael. And it's really pleasant. I was just walking back from lunch, walking along the gorgeous Yarra River amongst the eucalypts. And so while it's not, the weather's no doubt not quite as beautiful as it is up in Brisbane today, it's certainly a nice part of the world. From our perspective, we're really excited to share this report with you. I've been working in the not-for-profit sector for a couple of decades now, with Infoxchange for a good 10 years or so. And Rachael, who's also going to be presenting alongside me, is one of our consultants, who's very senior in expertise, and is really passionate about helping non-profits make the most of their technology, leveraging their data effectively, and all those wonderful not-for-profit platforms, whether they be Microsoft, Google, etc. And so we're both part of the Digital Transformation Hub team. So if you haven't checked it out, look up the Digital Transformation Hub, and we provide a whole range of services from digital guides, advice, capacity development, all those sorts of things. So, and really excited to talk to you both about the state of the sector, as well as some insights around Queensland organisations, because we had such a wonderful response across your state. So, As Stacey mentioned a little bit earlier, Infoxchange has been around for more than 30 years with 170 odd staff. One of our core services, our SRS client and case management service, it's not only was born and developed and continues to be maintained and supported out of Brisbane, but it's now used by sort of more than 5,000 not-for-profit organisations around the country. So we're very proud of our Queensland team and everything that they have achieved and continue to achieve. And so, yeah, very, very excited to talk to you today. The report that we released yesterday, so we haven't even held the official launch webinar yet, you're hot off the ranks, is in its 8th year. We really aim to provide a benchmark for all organisations to help you understand how you use technology effectively. I do always love the conversations that I have with people about it. You know, it's like, oh, most people have moved to the cloud. I'm still struggling. Maybe I can use this to help my board and my management team to address the issues and move towards it. Oh, what do you know? My staff aren't as happy as the average in terms of technology use and feeling comfortable with it. Or we're spending more than average on technology, but we're less happy. So what do we do about that? So the reason I love the report is it provides a sound evidence base on which to make decisions about the path forward, and also in which to inform the rest of your organisation about what the directions are and what might be right for you. You know, the average is, as I always say to non-profits, you generally don't want to be average, right? You generally want to be strong and you want to be passionate and you want to use technology well, but you don't need to use it well in every sense in every area. It's all about what's right for you. So really pleased, and thanks to Bede and his team, we had a 250% increase in responses from last year, and that was also thanks to the wonderful work with QCOS and supporting the data collection processes. Little participant snapshot for you. Queensland was about well represented, 12% across Australia and New Zealand of the population and of responses. And the other thing that we always like to do a checkpoint on is that we've got a good representation in terms of org size, the majority, 44%, being less than 5 employees, with sort of another 25% being small, and it sort of starts to ratchet down the larger you get. So what we do find is using technology in a very large organisation is dramatically different to tech use in a very small organisation. Small organisations are often struggling with what should I do, how do I find the expertise, or how do I pay for externals. Large organisations are often struggling with, oh, governance is hard, change takes time, we've got a multitude of technology applications, standards and environments, and it's a slow journey to move that boat. And so that's the challenge that often you see. Technology is often also very different depending on which service area you're in. So what we find is that organisations in the philanthropy and volunteering space need very different technology solutions to those in community development, or those in the education, training and employment space, or those in the disability aged care services space. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all in the whole range of technology. From our perspective, you should be on either the Microsoft non-profit platform or the Google non-profit platform. We don't care which too much. Happy to give advice as to which one's right in different situations. But once you get to the business applications, once you get to your capability and comfort of staff with technology, and once you start to think about measuring your impact and how important digital marketing is, those service areas make a massive difference. It's and that's where it's thinking about that is really important in terms of what you're doing. Key findings, just to jump in and start talking about a few highlights. I've got to say it's a rare day these days when we don't get a question about AI. Everyone's really keen to think about how can we use AI more effectively, what could we use it for safely and securely to help us achieve greater impact. You know, across Australia and New Zealand, this is an interesting little stat, across Australia and New Zealand, there was a doubling in terms of adoption of generative AI over the last 12 months. So in 12 months ago, 2022 survey, we asked the question, it was about 24%, this year it's close to 50%, and so doubling. Now, here's the interesting, you guys up in Queensland always love it. 2 times on average across Australia and New Zealand, Queensland greater than 10 times. So Queensland has been, you're coming off a lower base, but there was a dramatic increase in terms of AI and how you can use it. And I actually think that's part of the work that QCOS has done, to be perfectly honest. You've done, and you'll make this comment more than once, in terms of asking questions, talking about local issues, and you're seeing change as a result of that. And I think some of the stats, and this is not the only one I'll highlight, you know, are about the conversations that QCOS is leading about, is tech supporting you? What are you thinking about? Are you using it effectively? This one, it was low last year from a Queensland perspective. It's still low this year. This one annoys me. Keen to watch this over the next 12 months, ramp up over the national average. 76% of organisations have implemented some sort of multi-factor authentication, but only 58% of Queensland organisations. So a little bit of work still to do from a Queensland base in terms of MFA and cyber security protections, because MFA is one of the key protections that will make a big difference. So we always encourage organisations, and that's a useful stat in terms of what's important. Really interesting. People come to me, Marcus, what's the biggest difference in terms of, and how do I start to protect myself from a cybersecurity perspective? And one of the things we say is that, you know, it's a real challenge working in the not-for-profit sector. There is always more to do than you have the dollars or the available resourcing to achieve it. The first thing you need to do is think about what is your plan. Have a plan about what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. Think about what delivers you the most value. Across the average, it was only 13% have a clearly documented plan to improve cyber protections. Lovely to see. It's double that in Queensland. So the plan in terms of, you know, how you're going to move forward, what you're going to prioritise. Is it going to be policies and procedures? Is it going to be staff training? Is it going to be conversations with the executive? Are you going to do a penetration test? What is it that makes the biggest difference for you? Do you need insurance? Great to see, you know, you'll double the average in terms of, you know, not-for-profits across the region. Organisations, here's another one I think QCOS has really led as well. Only 22% of organisations across the 1,000 organisations that responded agreed that their systems enable to understand the impact of their services. There was 3 times the average in Queensland, so really nice to see that conversation that QCOS has been leading, you know, with Amy and others that I've been participating in, and so lovely to see that is, you know, you're well above that the 8 ball in terms of the average. 33% again regularly read decision making, data guides decision making. That's, and 71% in Queensland. And you're about on par from a technology plan, digital transformation strategy, 37%. So doing really well there in terms of thinking about how does technology support your organisation overall. So there's some key findings. I'm going to, you know, if you've got something you really want to know a little bit more about on a slide, don't hesitate to jump into chat. Stacey will interrupt me, or Rachael if she's talking. Also happy to take questions at the end, so feel free to do either. Now, one of the things about a plan, and as I said earlier, working in the not-for-profit sector, it's always a challenge in terms of there's more to do than time, resources, money. So we try and break technology into 5 areas because We sort of say, think about which area is the biggest priority, work on that, then work on the others. If you try and do everything at once, we generally find organisations struggle. So is it tech foundations? Is it your PCs, your network, your servers? Is it your systems and data and the way you measure your impact? Is it your digital marketing, your IT management, which is all about strategy, budgeting, governance, disaster recovery, etc.? Or is it about cybersecurity? And so one of the things that we say is, think about those areas, think about what's important for your organisation, and make sure you focus on that and make improvements. Don't try and do everything at once. We generally try and quantify capability across the 4 levels, from a challenge through to an advanced stage. At the challenge stage, it doesn't work well. Basic might be fine for the smaller organisations. So we've got plenty of organisations with 5, 10, 20 staff. They just need some foundations in place. You know, it works and it's functional, but it's not perfect. A number of organisations, particularly as you get to the 50, 100 and larger, really need some sound, reliable, efficient technology solutions. And we also work with organisations up in the advanced space in a range of areas, whether that be, you know, leveraging data effectively, thinking about and implementing AI to drive service improvements, or, you know, delivering services, you know, using technology in an online space. From a tech environment space, one of the things that we do find really important is that, unfortunately, 80% of very small organisations don't have any sort of roadmap in place, and that leads to some really reactive approaches. The presence of a plan, when we ran the numbers, the presence of the plan increased staff confidence. If you had some sort of digital roadmap, rough tech plan, or IT strategy, if you're a larger organisation, so that correlated with, you know, staff satisfaction and confidence improvement 24%. So really significant change. It's not, a plan is not just about you can fit what you need to do into your budget. The plan is also about, it gives staff confidence that you're heading in the right direction and they're starting to see changes over time. So for us, that's really important. There was a bit of I could say concerning, I could say surprising, but I will talk it through because I think it's really important. Overall, we saw a drop last year to this year in terms of how do you rate your organisation's technology environment. Top right, as you can see, and I'll talk about the stats in a sec, overall 21% drop in rating, intermediate down to challenged or basic. So there was last year, 2022, 61% rated intermediate, this year 40%, right? So significant drop. When we talked to people about it and when we looked at the comments in the survey, that was all about, we went through not only, but there was a good proportion of organisations saying, we moved to remote work really fast, right? And we implemented technologies and we threw it in and we knew it wasn't perfect, but at least people could work. Now, it's expected as standard. Staff are no longer making do with remote technologies that are difficult to use, have VPNs that drop out, you can only access half the systems. Staff are now saying this is now the way of, you know, the standard. This is the expectation. So the expectations have changed in terms of what non-profits need to provide, and that is the primary driver. It's not the tech suddenly got worse. We think there's been a challenge with budget, and you'll see that again in a minute. But that's been the primary driver from the conversations and the comments in the survey responses in terms of that 61% of organisations dropping to 40% and the increase in the challenged and the basic. So that's the really interesting thing. It's the the benchmark has changed in terms of what staff are expecting, and that's why staff are saying what I could put up with because we just had to get some stuff in place so we can work from home is no longer appropriate. We need reliable, efficient, easy to use systems. Also, we always love looking at the staff satisfaction because that provides good benchmarks in terms of if you're talking to your own staff, how your stats compare. Overall, on average, we're sort of in the slightly satisfied space, but we start people are starting to move a little bit towards satisfied, which is nice to see, even though the rating for tech is still problematic. I'm going to skip those just because I want to focus on the real stats. Rachael, would you mind just talking through the remote working data and talking about that?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Marcus. Following on from Marcus's statement about technology foundations, previously remote working was not as a consistent need across non-for-profit landscapes. It was often unusual for non-profit organisations to support remote working. So with the onset of COVID, this has sort of facilitated a large cultural shift. In 2021, just to give you some background, only 24% of organisations agreed that they had all of the required systems, software and infrastructure to support remote working. In 2022, you can see here on the chart that this figure rose to 69%. And then in 2023, we can see a slight drop to 51% of organisations reporting having all of the necessary infrastructure and server-based technology to support remote working. This might be as a result of the emphasis on sustaining a more permanent hybrid work culture. You can move to the next one if you like, Marcus.
All right, a little bit about tech foundations because I want to drill into that a little bit further. It's fascinating the interplay between devices, configuration, easy to use, and staff confidence. When devices are configured well, 63% of staff are confident or better using technology. That is significantly above the average. And so that balance of, are your devices, are your systems easy to use, really leads towards that confidence and ease of technology and comfort. So one of the things we often talk to organizations about is it's not just about training, right? Because one of the challenges that from a tech foundations perspective we see is that if people say, oh, my staff need training, they're sort of not literate, they're not confident, and that can be a challenge in some organizations or for some staff, but it's also about, are your devices configured well? Is it intuitive? Do your systems work well together? So from a PC, mobile and tablet functionality, when devices are configured well, you can see the 29% there, 63% feel confident using, but when devices are sometimes reliable, 85% feel less than confident using them. So it's really, if you've got good devices, well configured and reliable, staff confidence and satisfaction / efficiency really builds as a result of that. From an IT support perspective, really nice to see, that a number of organisations are, slowly but surely, building that staff support and IT support capability. We've still got, more than 50% saying it's not always as fast as required or it's not reasonable, but we have seen a steady improvement over the last couple of years. And so that's really nice to see. And it's about thinking, the more you can support your staff and the more your environment works well, the better off it is in terms of your staff being able to focus on their clients and their core mission rather than dealing with stupid tech. We asked this question for the first time this year. Tell us a little bit about your servers. Really nice to see 1 in 3 not-for-profits no longer have a server. right? Don't have any servers, 36%. I'm rounding a bit there because we're friends. About 1 in 4 have servers sitting in their offices. Again, roughly 1 in 3 servers running in the cloud. For those that are a little bit more techie and interested, Azure, for those that have servers running in the cloud, the Microsoft Azure platform is the most popular with 41% of organizations. Really interesting to see that Google is used by 28%. So the Google Cloud Platform is actually almost a little bit more popular than the Google Workspace platform for organizations. AWS, another, the big three being, Microsoft, Google, and AWS rounding it out at 10%, with a whole lot of other options in terms of, IBM, Oracle, etc. So that's changed dramatically. When we, started running this survey 8+ years ago, running servers in the cloud was very rare. So it's fascinating to see how that's changed. Talk us a little bit through cloud, Rachael.
Sure, absolutely. So in relation to cloud collaboration, we can see that 57% of organizations had already moved to the cloud or were currently in the process of moving a significant portion of their IT to the cloud. Those who were not making use of cloud technology either did not consider a cloud migration to be a priority for their organization, or they cited concerns related to a lack of understanding data security and data privacy. If this is something that sort of rings true for you and your own organization, we do have free resources that you can access from the Digital Transformation Hub, where we provide resources and information to non-for-profits to enable migration to the cloud, secure your data, and take full advantage of digital collaboration tools. In relation to primary file sharing applications, the results that we received were that 46% of organizations are currently using Microsoft 365 as their primary file sharing application. 21% prefer to use Google Workspace, and some of the other applications included Dropbox, email, and Microsoft Windows Server. Thanks,
Fantastic.
Marcus.
Cyber, always a challenge, always more to do in this space. I wish there wasn't. I wish the internet was safe by design. Unfortunately, it's not. And from my experience working with hundreds of organizations over the last, couple of years, too often it's something that's hard. So non-profits put on the back burner and don't give it the attention it needs. From my perspective, I'm seeing that that change a lot. We're having a lot more conversations about help us get the core in place, help us take the first steps. Our first comment is strong cybersecurity starts with people. I'm sure if I had a show of hands who's received a phishing text or a phishing email, everyone would put their hand up. And that's where having staff that understand the risk and are comfortable their role in protecting the organization's information is really critical. We've got free cybersecurity training available for non-profit staff through the Digital Transformation Hub site. It's a self-paced learning module, doesn't cost a dime. But despite us going, we're sick of telling people to go train your staff. Okay, no one's doing it. Let's put up a free training course. Only 12% of organisations provide that regular cyber awareness training for staff, and less than a quarter have effective processes to manage risks. As I mentioned before, 76% of organisations have implemented MFA, 58% of Queenslanders. About 50% of organisations maintain reliable, appropriate backups for key information systems. Queensland's above the bar, so well done there. Security risk processes, again, Queensland, lovely to see that doing well, and processes for patching and deploying security updates, again, nice to see that. So overall, from a cybersecurity perspective, a little bit to lift in terms of MFA implementation, but the rest are looking really solid. So that's really nice to see. QCOS does a lot of wonderful work, I'm going to say that, in the data, the insight, the analysis, the capability, the measurement space. And as a sector, we've still got a long way to go, is my opinion. You know, overall, only a third of organisations agree their systems work well, and only 22% agree that their system enables them to measure the impact of service and outcomes. So, you know, that's personal passion of mine to drive that number up year on year. I do partly blame, hope not, who knows if we've got someone from a funder here or not, hopefully we do. I do partly blame funders as well, because they continually require us to integrate to different systems and force us to use different systems, which doesn't always make a whole lot of sense. And that's why you see sort of 66% of organisations use 2 to 4 systems to store information about their clients, members or stakeholders. 14% use 5 or more systems. More and more, the more diverse your services are. So if you're doing NDIS services and aged care and, you know, financial relief and domestic violence, and you're doing a bit of community development, and you're doing NDIS, you're more likely to have multiple systems than an organisation that's just doing residential aged care, right? So, and that's because it's very hard to make one system do everything well unless you're big with a lot of money and can customise it. And you know, we've worked with organisations in that space, big with a lot of musty, they customise the system. But, you know, the smaller you are, and I had this conversation yesterday with someone that's sort of reached out to the hub. It's like they're saying, well, can I get one system to do everything? I said, you've only got a small number of staff, your IT funds are limited, you can't customise the system sufficiently to meet your needs, you know, if that's your budget. So you're probably going to have to buy 2 systems and look at how you integrate your data. So some real conundrums there. From a systems and data perspective, 30% of organisations agree their data is easy to understand and use, and we also facilitate the Data Catalyst network that quite a few organisations are participating in up in Queensland, which is really all about leveraging data to reduce long-term entrenched disadvantage. And it's, you know, the numbers are there as a baseline, which we're hoping will change and improve over time. 31% agree systems work well, 29% say it's easy to access essential information and reports, 22% understand impact, and 33% guides decision making. That last one, that's not even an digital question. That's just, is your data useful enough to guide? Are you making evidence-based decisions? And so it's just, you know, it just shows the degree of challenge in this space. That's probably the most appropriate thing I can say. And if you're one of the norm, e.g., you struggle with some of your systems, asking why and thinking about how you move forward in that space and recognising it's not a 12-month activity is something that's really important. You know, generally changing a system is 6 to 18 months in terms of effort, based depending on size and breadth and all that sort of stuff. So, but if you don't change it, you'll keep getting what you've got in some respects. So that's some of the conversations that we like to encourage, because if you're not getting value out of the time that your staff spend entering data into systems, you're wasting way too much of their time, and everyone wants that to change. So that's sort of where getting that right from an organisational perspective is really critical. Marketing and comms, really interesting. Canva is taking the world by storm. Adobe's sort of dropping down, and so that's sort of one of the most popular things that people are using these days. If you're not on the non-profit, if your digital marketing or graphics team isn't using Canva, I tell them they really need to at least have a look. It's free, for the core. Core options for not-for-profits, and most organisations are finding, even though there's not-profit deals available for Adobe, is that it's a good option for a lot of organisations for a core proportion of their graphics needs. Social media really does play a large role in digital presence. Widespread adoption, 81% across the sector. In the website space, 49% are sitting on WordPress, bit of custom Wix and Squarespace, but what we are finding in the website space is that majority of organizations are in that WordPress simple platform. It's when you need something more sophisticated, that's when they go beyond that. While 92% of nonprofits have a website, only about 33% like the look and feel, reporting that it's easy to use. And for us, that's a bit of a conundrum, that 33%, we like it. 50% sort of partially agree with it, so that's not as bad. And there's a real conundrum there. MailChimp, if you're doing email marketing, MailChimp still has the core of that, particularly because if you're smaller, you can get started very cost effectively. But as you start to scale, generally you find that there may be other options out there from a digital marketing perspective that are more cost effective or more functional for you. As obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but Facebook is the core of social these days for the majority of nonprofits. Interesting to continually see the rise in LinkedIn. Instagram's up there as number 2, and then you've got the rest of it as well in terms of depending on what your core audience is, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, TikTok, etc. So it really does depend on who you're trying to reach, what platforms they use. It shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all from a digital marketing perspective. We do always love to see a bit of innovation in the sector. And so from our perspective, it's really nice to see that, sector adoption of AI has really jumped up over the past 12 months. Predominantly, that's still in generative AI. So, in terms of AI to generate content, whether it's ChatGPT, Bing Chat, Bard, etc., the capabilities are significant there in terms of leveraging AI technologies. We do make so I think it jumped from 12 to 24% over the last year. And we did also ask them who plans to use it. That's planning to roughly jump again up to 45% this at the end of the year is what organisations told us. And we are continuing to see, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes beyond 45% when we do the analysis next year. A lot of organisations using mobile apps, assistive technology, drones more in specialist areas, so particularly in the environmental space and a few other areas. Interesting to see the big jump in big data and machine learning in terms of intent. And so, while only 4% of organisations are using it, 24% are planning to start exploring and or use it in the next 12 months. And for us, that's a really interesting space. So it can deliver great dividends, but to work well, machine learning needs to have quality data and a good sized data set, and that's not always easy to get in the non-profit space. So it'd be really interesting to see how that sort of space expands, even though there is some real opportunities, and we're working with a few organizations at the moment to help them really get better use out of their data and start to think about, all right, so how can we generate real insights that support our staff to make a bigger impact? Again, virtual augmented reality, it's a very specialist niche, more in the training, environmental, experiential sort of space. I'll be surprised if we hit 12% using blockchain and cryptocurrency, but who knows, let's see. And robotics, again, we're seeing more of that probably in an NDIS, aged care sort of area rather than mainstream non-profit tech space. Priorities and challenges. This is my last slide, or almost my last slide, I should say. So I will open it up in a few minutes, get your questions ready if you have some, because always happy to talk in more detail. Top three, this is a little bit depressing for me at least. Top three challenges have been the same for the last few years in our space. So top three challenges have been budget, staff capacity and capability, access to affordable resources. So that I don't have what I need to do what I need to do, being consistent for the last 3 years in the region, in the non-profit sector. Queensland, almost the same, little tweak there you can see on the right. Your number 3 sort of popped in this year as keeping abreast of tech changes and identifying where to invest IT spend. So almost the same, but a little tweak at the end. So from our perspective, there's a real challenge in terms of getting the resources is to do what you need to do, or to identify what you need to do in terms of that tech investment is the biggest challenge. That's where we hope some of that's why what we try and do is make that a little bit simpler. So through our through our Connecting Up platform, bringing non-profit discounts to reduce the cost of technology, through the Digital Transformation Hub, providing good practice guides, webinars. We've just had Microsoft and Google, and we're still running them, free webinars to help you get across the latest tech, as well as the expert bar on the hub, giving free advice to organisations, helping the independent, where should I change, what should I do, how do I solve this problem? So, that's part of our passion, helping you address those big challenges. Top priorities, again, complete alignment between Queensland and the area. Website, social media, and data protection cybersecurity practices. Nice to see from the perspective of that cyber is up there and getting some prominence given the challenges. Interesting to note digital capabilities of staff and volunteers is up there as well, particularly for your organisations, your non-profits, and that's been a common theme in years across Australia as well recently. So real challenges there, but if you're challenged by some of those things, you're not alone, and that's where talking with other QCOS members, etc., can always make a big difference. As I mentioned, you're getting the first webinar on this. Report was launched only yesterday. We've got our launch webinar with a range of amazing speakers. Dr. Andrew Lee, Assistant Minister for Charities, Air Marshal Darren Goley, National Cybersecurity Coordinator, the magnificent Catherine Brown, CEO of Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, and Sophie, who works alongside Rachael and myself, one of the consultants on the digital transformation team. So I think BEAD's just sort of popped in for those that are interested in delving to another level and also hearing about what's happening on the national stage rather than the Queensland specific data sets. Jump in and you can hear from those leaders about this is where the sector's going, these are the important bits, this is what our priorities are, and this is how we're supporting the sector effectively. As I mentioned at the start, Digital Transformation Hub, digitaltransformation.org.au, really we created it to help non-profits use technology more effectively, because we know it's not always easy. Really important that you make the most out of it, because we've spent time thinking about what's important and where can we write a guide to help organisations versus what sort of webinars would make the biggest difference. So, 98, 99% of information and webinars are free on the hub, so it's not a cost. And we do work very hard with tech providers, both here in Australia and in the US, to bring a lot of those discounts to you through the Connecting Up platform as well. There we go. Questions? I'll open it up. Lovely to talk about anything in more detail. If there's questions or insights or challenges that you would like to talk through.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Similar to you, it's a bit tricky when you see that the same challenges have existed for a couple of years now.
Yep.
But I think that really helps us double down on our efforts to address those particular issues and really commit to trying to alleviate some of those pressures for the not-for-profit sector. Our team have actually just recently been talking about the use of AI. In our team, we do a lot of things like tender writing support, and we know more and more organisations are exploring how they use things like AI for generating reports, for writing pieces for reports or for tender writing. So lots of interesting, just when you kind of think that you've heard and seen everything, of course, in the digital space, that's never the case, and it just keeps advancing as we go along. So lots of things for our team anyway, to be exploring in those areas. That's kind of one thing that we're looking at, but we know lots of organisations thinking more about how they use AI.
Absolutely, and that's probably one of the most common questions we get these days. And I'm going to be really honest, it's a hard space, particularly because it's moving so fast that literally, if we were an expert 6 weeks ago in a particular space in AI, we're likely not going to be an expert in that space today, right? And keeping across what's happening and how fast it's moving is the biggest challenge. From our perspective in an AI space, there are a couple of things that we strongly suggest organisations be aware of. That is, if you're using a free tool, you've likely got no protections over what data you post into that tool or what happens with that data once you post it. So as an example, it's great to use to produce marketing and proposals, so long as you're not using anything that you want to keep confidential. Don't post client data in there, please. We've heard one or two stories in the rare occurrence of certain organisations going, well, I've written my client letter. It's like, if you've used a free tool, that's not appropriate for a whole stack of reasons I'm not going to go into. There are other tools often which aren't free, which do keep your data confidential. But just remember, all those free tools, they've got to make money somehow, right? They're not don't generally exist for your own good. That's the conundrum.
Yeah.
And so that's just about being aware that AI tools will have biases in them because of what they're trained on, not always appropriate to your population sets, all those sorts of things.
That's something that discernment when it comes to free products, and this is something obviously our sector is really we're operating on small budgets. We all know that. And so we will often understandably gravitate towards free tools and resources because that's what we can afford to do. And so that discernment between and knowing why something's free, who it's being used by, they're all questions that we need to continually ask ourselves when we're using them. And that's absolutely the case for anything digital in the digital world. I can see here that someone, Cassandra, thanks for your question. Cassandra has asked, does Infoxchange have any resources to help not-for-profits create a policy around the use of generative AI and manage the risk and opportunities?
And short answer is not yet, but now we are thinking about it, is my honest answer, sorry. From our perspective, and we do, like we're both thinking in terms of, should we be doing a webinar on it, every sort of 3-4 months or so, or can we write a guide to help organisations? What I would say at the moment is use it thoughtfully would be my comment. You don't use AI blindly is the primary thing that we try to get across to organizations. Think about, what are you going to use the output for? Is there a risk that your data will be, whatever you're using it for, will be exposed? Is there a risk of bias in terms of, population data sets, and you're going to, LGBTIQ often isn't well represented, Indigenous, Australia is not well represented. And so thinking about what you're using it for, and about the fact that it's not fact-based, there are errors in it as well. They're probably the 3 points that we try and get across, right?
Yeah, sure.
And if it's used thoughtfully and used with a manner of ensuring that organizations don't just blindly trust or blindly think what comes out is appropriate and what I put in is going to be kept secure, that's the key.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that comment, Marcus. I can see here, Tonya, we're already getting feedback now about your survey for next year. So Tonya has noted here that there was nothing about ethics and the ethical use of data as opposed to cyber security. Is that outside the remit of the survey? Is there scope for exploring that next time?
Absolutely, there's scope. I'll put it on the list. It's always a challenge. That's probably the right way. We always get feedback the survey's too long, but we always get feedback we want more questions. So it's always balancing. And we've got some very passionate internal data ethicists that will come and talk data ethics for, they could talk all day if you want. And so that's really the challenge that we're seeing, is it's always that conundrum. So we'll add it to the next year suggestions list, and let's hope it gets in there, because it really is a challenge.
Yeah, thank you. And Amy is, I know, online and may make a comment about this, but Tonya, the QCOS is Research and Evaluation Network. If you're not already linked into that network, this is the kind of content that they're often discussing. That's another avenue through which we can explore that as well, because that's a really important one. I'm just noting also that Richard has commented that with the free version of GPT 3.5, it does have tendencies for hallucination, so it should be a start point rather than the end point. And that's absolutely a kind of a thing through the content we've been looking at around the use of AI for tender writing, for reports, etc., is that, yes, it may serve as an avenue for a literature review, if you like, of what's out there, what knowledge there is out there on the net, but absolutely needs to be filtered through your own organisational frameworks, expertise, fact-checked, etc. And I think that's a really good way of putting it, Richard. It should be a start point rather than the end point.
Yep, absolutely.
We had a question there about the alternative to Adobe, and I think someone's already answered Canva. Thank you.
Check it out. Yep. Love it.
Yeah, yes, it seems to be quite an easy one to use for those I know who have recently gotten into Canva. So it does seem to be a good alternative.
Yeah, the serious graphic designers will still need Adobe. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't do everything. But if you only use it every now and then, and it's about creating some stuff, it's fantastic, and it's free for non-profits.
Were there any further questions for Marcus and his team today? As we're heading into the end of the year, I don't have as many events to promote you as I usually do. We usually have a huge amount of events on the calendar, and some of those are winding up for the year. But we will be sending out you a post-event email with some events you may be interested in. But what I did really want to reiterate here was that if you're interested in this space of what we're talking about today, there are 2 networks that QCOS runs that you may be really interested in joining. One of those is the Research and Evaluation Network, which I've just spoken about, who do talk about data and the use and all the many different topics that are offshoots of data research and evaluation. And the other network is the Quality Collaboration Network. And we meet and talk about things that are quality and compliance focused. And these networks are kind of friends with one another because we often have topics that are overlapping. So there's many different focus topics that we'll be looking at between those two networks in the new year. I do encourage you to check out the two networks on the QCOS website. So that's the Research and Evaluation Network and the Quality Collaboration Network. We'll include information on those networks in your post-event email. So you'll be receiving the information you need about those two if you're keen to join us in the new year. The sector development team here at QCOS are putting together our program events for 2024, and we're always interested to hear what specific issues that you and your organisations are grappling with so that we can take the content from organisations like Infoxchange and really drill down to the issues that are affecting you and your organisations, either whether it's in the front line or in a policy and advocacy capacity. So please let us know of any things that are coming up for you that you would like us to consider for our sector development program that might be related directly to some of the things we spoke about today, as well as all the other wonderful things that the community services sector are addressing every day in their work lives. So please let us know what you need from us. QCOS is always happy to hear your feedback. And we do have a poll that's going to come up on your screen now, so you can let us know how you found the session. But happy for you to utilise the chat too. Now, you will please look out for that post-event email. It'll have links from today, including the report and the information you need to get in touch with Infoxchange. Infoxchange have a huge range of supports available to organisations. If you're a small organisation, you really need quite, an organisation to walk alongside you to do a bit of a digital health check in your organisation, give your board, your management committee some next steps to invest in. They're able to work with you on that level, as well as professional development, general knowledge sharing, that kind of thing. So please check out their digital transformation hub because there's lots of stuff there to support your organisation in whatever you have identified you need to do next, or to help you figure out what you need to do next. So please check them out. Thanks, Marcus, Rachael, Bede, for your time today. Let me just see if that poll is going to pop up for everyone before you all go. And I really hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. We will be seeing you at a QCOS event again soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Stacey. Thanks, everyone. Lovely to talk to you again.
Thank you.